Welcome to the Living in a Fantasy World podcast. We're going to look back at a fantastic return to the Premier League with Game Week 1 and also preview Game Week 2. Before we get into it, just a reminder to join the leagues for Living in the Fantasy World. So if you want to join our league, the code is BR4TSR. That's also on our Facebook page, which is Living in a Fantasy World. Just search for that. You'll find the league code on there with a link as well. So diving straight into last week's results. So fantastic start for Arsenal. I watched the game. I thought Jesus was a big threat. Zinchenko got an assist. Martinelli with a goal as well. See people turning to Zinchenko. I'm personally reluctant. I think although Tierney's coming back from an injury, Zinchenko may play this weekend again. I think Tierney is the first choice left back. Zinchenko's covered for there and possibly playing midfield. So, but again, Xhaka and Partey seem first choice in centre mid. So, for me, I'm in no rush to get Zinchenko in despite a positive first week. He's still not scored in the Premier League as of yet. So, yeah, moving on to the other results. So we've got Liverpool drew 2-2 away at Fulham. Fulham played really well. Mitrovic proving he can do it in the Premier League. We'll see how his season goes. Bournemouth, this was a surprise one for me. I thought Bournemouth, I thought Villa would actually win that game. Two big lads up top, Kiefer Moore and Solanke. Big threat from set pieces. Leeds 2-1 at home to Wolves. I thought that there's a game that could go either way. Looking from the highlights, it was sort of end to end. But yeah, Leeds come out with a victory there. Interesting to see that Connor Cody, a mainstay in Wolves' side for a number of years now, and also a good fantasy point scorer, has gone on loan to Everton this week. Newcastle, solid 2-0 victory at home to Forest. Since Eddie Howe's taken over, they've played better brand of football, in my opinion, but they've also been solid at the back. So I had Trippier in my team. I know other players did well as well. You get your 6 points clean sheet. But Dan Burn, for example, I saw quite a few had him in as well. So good team for defenders, I think, this year. Although the start after Brighton this week, they've got City and Liverpool, I think, in the coming weeks. So just one to be careful with, but good to have a player in. You can always move them to your bench for a tougher game. Spurs scored 4 without Son or Kane getting on the score sheet, going 1-0 behind to typical James Ward-Prowse Southampton goal. And then Spurs coming back. Kulusevski was the main man there. Chelsea won a bit of a tight, scrappy game, really, away at Everton 1-0. Werner's left back to go to Leipzig, his former club this week. Leicester 2-2 with Brentford. Brentford coming from behind. The three lads up front, Tony, Visser and Muembo, all a threat. All good point scorers on fantasy. Visser doesn't play all the time, but potentially they started with three of them up away from home, so there's nothing that says they won't do that at home this week to Man United, who a lot's been spoken about this week. I said, I think on last week's podcast, not to underestimate Brighton. They beat them 4-0 at the Amex end of last season. And yeah, same old United. I won't go into what everyone's already said this week too much other than to say, do I trust any United players in my fantasy team at the minute? No, I did have Rashford in. He's coming out soon, if not this week. City, again, the Haaland show. I actually left Cancelo on my bench just because I thought West Ham may score, but I had Ederson in net for sort of defensive points to cover me there. Didn't have Haaland in, which was always going to be a big risk. So yeah, looking good for those Haaland owners. So that's a bit of a summary of last week. And then if I move on to this week's sort of planning, I guess, before we get onto the fixtures, let's look at the points from last week. So Pascal Gross from Brighton, 15 points. With Shah, I mentioned Newcastle defenders. He was one I didn't mention. Again, under Howe, he chipped in with a few goals, set pieces. Mitro up there, Haaland, Kulusevski, one I had last year. I stayed away from this year just because of the 8.0 score and the fact that Conte could rotate with Moura, Richarlison. That was my only concern, but yeah, I mean, he's just a constant point scorer there, isn't he? Mentioned Shinchenko, some couple of the Bournemouth lads in there. Dewsbury Hall's one, 5 million. I mean, last year he started, he didn't get many points, but towards the end of the season, I was one I looked at because he plays every week. And if he can add goals and assists to his game, wow, what a cheap option we've got there. So yeah, one to look out for him, I think, this season. And of course, Salah's up there as well. I also wanted to look at this threat sort of stat. So moving on away from Salah, Darwin, he only played, I think, 30 minutes, 35 minutes maybe, but his threat is there for everyone to see. I think he will start this week. Possibly a good captain option, I would say, if you've got him in your team. St. Maximin, again, similar. Don't think he actually got an assist or goal from memory. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, he's up there from a threat perspective, as is, we've obviously mentioned some of these, but Maddison is one that I've got. Sterling playing up front for Chelsea. Dallo, I looked at putting him in, but United's defence put me off in terms of clean sheet. Dallo attacking fullback, only 4.5. It's a good option, but I just don't trust United to keep clean sheets at the moment. Willock, I'm actually going to mention his brother Chris Willock. If you haven't seen it yet, look for Chris Willock's goal for QPR. What a goal this last week. Took on a few players, smashed it in the top corner. So yeah, mention for the Willock family there. Okay, if I look as well at who players bringing in, who we're taking out, Haaland, unsurprisingly, nearly 900,000 players have put Haaland in. Shevchenko, 500,000 or so. Mitrovic, Kulusevski, Martinelli, 6.1 million. You see a slight increase from the fantasy guys. So Saliba as well. Wow, what a performance from Saliba, young centre back for Arsenal. On that performance, has to play ahead of White, even when Tomiyasu comes back at right back for me. Players we've transferred out. We as in Royal We, the fantasy players. Kane, I imagine people getting Kane out for Haaland, Darwin. Perisic, after Sessegnon scored, he started. I think Perisic might be getting back to full fitness and then eventually will be possibly first choice, but Conte definitely likes Sessegnon, so I can see why people are taking him out. Cash more because of Villa's start. I mean, I believe that Villa's away form last year was really poor, but they've got an easier home fixture. We'll come on to the fixture shortly this week, so I'm in no rush to take out my Villa player, but I can understand why some have, which leads us quite nicely on to fixtures. So Villa got Everton at home. I mentioned an easier fixture in my eyes. Calvert-Lewin out injured. Only really Rondon available with him coming back from suspension. If you've got, personally, I would have kept Cash if I had him in because I think that's a clean sheet for me. Everton may surprise us, who knows. Arsenal, Leicester, I can see goals in that game. Not convinced with defenders, possibly attacking players for sure. Get them in your team. Brighton, Newcastle, it's a hard one to call this. I sort of fancy a 0-0. I don't know why. I just think they'll cancel each other out. Both solid at the back. Not firing on all cylinders up front compared to other teams, but have got players that can score. So, yeah, I don't know. I think 0-0. City, it's hard to perceive past them this week. The Haaland guys, I'm sure, will be thinking, let's put him as captain. I'll certainly be playing both my City players. Southampton, Leeds, harder one to call. Ward-Prowse is one I'm possibly looking at, amongst others. Like I say, Rashford at United for me. I'm after his performance, his confidence looks shot, and I don't trust him. He's coming out of my team ASAP. Wolves against Fulham. Will Mitro turn up again? Will Wolves do okay? I know they lost last week, but again, only going off the highlights of what I saw, Wolves did look a threat. So yeah, good one. I wouldn't be in any mad rush to get your Wolves players out. I think that's a winnable game for them, despite Fulham's great performance last week. Brentford United, I mean, I've got even Tony and I'm going to play him just because of what happened last week, but it'll be interesting to see what Ten Hag does. Does he change everything? Does he go with the same team again and ask them to pull the finger out? Who knows? We'll see. Forest at home to West Ham. First home game for Forest. Be a great victory to get over West Ham. But I can see a solid West Ham team turn up. Draw or away win for me, that one. Chelsea Spurs, hard to call. Again, I think I'm going to sit on the fence and say draw. For me, similar with the Arsenal Leicester game, it's attacking players. I'm not sure I'll be keeping defenders from either team in for that one. And then Liverpool and Palace on the Monday night kick-off. It's hard to see Liverpool turning up like they did against Fulham. You'd think they'd turn up re-energised, revitalised team this week to get the points going. So, yeah, that's your week 1 summary and your week 2 preview. I hope that brought you some food for thought. Wish you luck with your teams. Again, reminder, if you like the podcast, please subscribe on YouTube. Add any comments. Also like us on Facebook. Search for Living in a Fantasy World. And also, please do join the league, BR4TSR. And again, that is on the Facebook page as well. So hopefully you all have a great week with fantasy and get as many points as possible. All the best.